The Banker. This is a racism blockbuster movie about Anthony Mackie and Samuel Jackson, inspired by true event. This is Bernard Garrett, a shoe-shining boy in Willis, Texas in 1993. Don't be fooled by this untidy bicycle cap. Beneath this cap hides a top business expert. This little black boy chooses to set up his stall in front of the bank intentionally, so that his customers are all rich white people. He doesn't care about the little money he earned by shining their shoes. He often works slowly so he can hear the financial secrets from his white customers while they wait. As soon as they leave, Bernard would write down the point he had grabbed on his notebook. Repeatedly, he had been chased by a huge black security man. His only interest was just for their valuable financial knowledge because his lifelong dream is to become a real estate guru. Texas in 1939, a place where black people are oppressed by severe discrimination. His father tells him gloomily that his dream is impossible, but Bernard's eyes shows a wholeheartedly determination against all probability. 15 years later in 1954, the grown-up boy relocates to Los Angeles with his wife Eunice and his son. Here the racial bias is not as severe as it's in his hometown, so he decided to start his business here. The family of three has to live in a ramshackle utility room of one of his wife's relatives. Still, Bernard promises his wife that they will move out soon. Due to his ambition, his wife's uncles try finding Bernard a job, but he turned it down to focus on his long-desired dreams. Few days later, he starts as a real estate agent and searches for houses for sale everywhere in the city. Through dedicated observation, he noticed that the black community in Los Angeles is overcrowded while the white community still has many empty houses around. The advantage that he foresaw was that black people have rental needs and financial strength, but there is no market, and this will be a great opportunity for his real estate ambition. Bernard sees a white-owned apartment with weeds on the front door, obviously not in very good state. But all he can see was advantage of the house's location, which is adjacent to the black dwellers. When he sees a property that will profit him, he goes to the owner and proposes a deal that you only rented out half of the apartment, so why don't you sell it to me? And I'll give you $30,000 now, and I'll give you another $5,000 when I rent out all the rooms. Although the owner admires his idea, but he doesn't want to do any risky business. Before leaving, Bernard suddenly glances at the owner's calendar, which shows he is a VIP customer in one of the local bank. So an idea comes to his mind. He says goodbye to the house owner and goes to the bank directly, where he finds the manager who sent the calendar. At the bank, the manager's secretary, who discriminates against black people, refuses to introduce Bernard to the manager. He waits for a few hours at the bank door, and when the manager comes out, he stops him immediately. He says, "I know one of your VIP customers. The business I do will benefit him, and I hope you can approve a loan for me," but the bank manager rejects him without thinking twice. That very night, Bernard receives a call from the owner and asks him if he tried using his name to get a loan. He has no choice but to apologize. Unpredictably, the owner doesn't blame him, but rather he admires Bernard's belief that he will not give up until his goal is achieved. The owner decides to guarantee the loan for him, so he gets the first loan in his life from the bank and buys the property. Bernard's first day in the building trying to do some repairs. An old white lady has just returned home from shopping when she sees a black man at her door. "What are you doing?" She asks with a sharp voice. The black man answers calmly, "I'm renovating the apartment building." The old lady speaks with a mean face, "Workers like you should be careful." Bernard responded, "Don't worry, this is my building and I will definitely take good care of it." To her surprise, the old lady went in angrily and informed the police. After a short while, the police arrived and asked Bernard that an old lady called the police, and then asked Bernard if he pretended to be the rightful owner of the building. As expected, Bernard takes out a copy of the real estate certificate. It turns out that he has foreseen trouble, so he is prepared in advance. The police realize that the house really belongs to him, so they leave in a bad mood. That night, Bernard returns to the apartment building. The old lady at the door sees him and immediately tells him to get out because it is not the time for renovation. Bernard still replies calmly, "I am not a renovation worker now, I am the owner." The old lady is dumbfounded, and a few days later she had her son moved her out of the building angrily because she doesn't want to live in the same building with black people. As soon as the old lady leaves, Bernard rents out her house to a black lady. Sure enough, the black tenants market is huge as Bernard has foreseen. The building is quickly filled and Bernard gives the negotiated follow-up payment to the former owner. The former owner admires Bernard very much and offers to start a business with him. Bernard chooses the house and calculates the income, and the old owner negotiates the transaction and signs the contract. With the formal owner in front, white people won't know that they are doing business with a black man, and they will split the revenue from their real estate. Bernard readily agrees. The cooperation between the two goes very smoothly and they make a lot of money immediately. Bernard also moves from an apartment block to a mansion shortly after, providing a happy life for his beloved family. However, life does not always go as smoothly as planned. An unforeseen circumstance can arise at any moment. The former owner who works with Bernard is old and frail and dies suddenly a few years later. His equity in the company is inherited by his wife. This woman severely discriminates against black people and doesn't want to cooperate with Bernard. She disapprovingly offers to buy Bernard shares at a very low price, and if he disagrees she will sue him. In that era when whites and blacks go to court, who do you think the judge would favor? Bernard is not willing to be treated so unfairly, so he decides to go to court, but he had to find someone to testify to prove his cooperative relationship with the formal owner. He thinks of the bank manager, but the manager has already cooperated with the widow to stand against Bernard again. Bernard stands in the bank and looks around. The neat and tidy bank building shows systematically prejudiced folks everywhere. Just because of the color of his skin, he is often scorned when he walks into the bank. Thinking of this, a bold plan gradually rises up in Bernard's mind. There are 4 banks in one building, and each of them has closed doors for the black people. At this moment, Bernard's mind generated a genius idea. I will buy this building and see who of you dares to discriminate against me again. So Bernard went back to Joe, another black real estate developer in Los Angeles, and tells him his plans. At first, Joe thinks he is out of his mind because the land price of the building is extremely high and never has a black man ever bought land in LA downtown before. Why does he want to buy this building? Because as long as he owns the building, the banks inside will serve him. They dare not refuse to give him a loan. They will also disclose the real estate trend to him so that his real estate business will be smoother. Joe is shocked by his idea, but after thinking about it, he believes it will work. Although he is extremely wealthy, he is also subject to white people everywhere. If he can step on white bankers on white land, he will make more money. However, they still cannot negotiate transactions with white people directly, so they need a white person as an agent. In this regard, Bernard already has an idea in mind for Matt, who has been helping him with his renovations. This guy is an honest man. He's also very ambitious, but just a little inexperienced. So Bernard, Eunice, and Joe set out to train Matt comprehensively, teaching him mathematical thinking and real estate business, high-class manners, and golf respectively. Matt lives up to expectations and quickly becomes proficient at golf and real estate deals. While playing golf, he can calculate real estate valuations just like a young and promising entrepreneur. At a golf club, Matt meets the owner of the bank building. Of course, this encounter is also arranged by Joe, and their conversation went well. Matt gets the chance to buy the building and the rest will be negotiated. But Matt doesn't know how to do it. Before the negotiation, Bernard helps Matt make all the preparations. He first counts the number of lights on in the building after dark, then calculates the vacancy rate of the building, and then gets the building estimate value through the building's annual revenue and operating costs. Bernard prepares any numbers that might be involved and asks Matt to memorize these numbers before meeting with the owner. As a result, no matter how the big boss bluffs about his property, Matt is always one step ahead and gives out the exact number, which shocks the big boss. The accountant beside him is also dumbfounded. They all think that they have encountered a mathematics genius. And at the end, Bernard gets the building that is initially priced at more than $2.4 million for just $1.56 million. From then on, whenever Bernard goes in or out of the building, the president of every bank will come to shake his hand. The little manager who made things difficult for him in the past is shocked. Bernard and Joe's real estate careers expand rapidly. They break the strict zoning of Los Angeles' black and white segregation single-handedly. Bernard takes his family back to Texas to visit his father. After their dinner, his father tells him he is so proud of his accomplishments. The next day, Bernard walks around town with his son to the bank, where Bernard worked as a shoe-shining boy. At that time, Texas was the most racist place in America. They meet a young boy shining shoes just like Bernard used to when he was little. To Bernard's surprise, the boy will only work on the shoes of white folks. This little incident touches Bernard and awakens his sense of responsibility to his fellow man. He secretly makes up his mind that he must change the status quo and help the black community in his hometown to get better housing. The next day, Bernard visits Joe and tells him that they should buy the Mainland Bank in Texas. Joe thinks Bernard is out of his mind for even thinking about such moves, because the racism in Texas was so ruthless, but Bernard manages to show his compelling reasons. Joe agrees to go through with his moves. They recruit Matt again and use him to be their forefront man as usual. They meet with the bank owner, Robert Florence Sr. and Jr. to discuss the numbers of the deal, despite Florence Jr.'s suspicions. His father still sold the bank to Matt and his partners, Bernard and Joe. With the Mainland Bank acquired, Bernard gets to work and starts helping the African Americans to get their loans approved. Things went well for some time, until Florence Jr. starts investigating the loans that their bank approves. One day, Florence follows Matt and meets up with Bernard and Joe. He confronts them about the loans they approved and threatens them with a letter from the U.S. Treasury Department. He says the department will inspect the bank's operations in 1 month, as Florence Jr. leaves. The guys discuss their next moves, and Matt comes up with a suggestion that they should buy another bank and transfer the problem loans from Mainland to that bank. They discuss the purchase of the Bank of Marlon Moore, and Bernard says the main problem is overseeing the operations of the bank. In response, Matt suggests that he should be allowed to run the new bank. Bernard expresses his discomfort with the idea, but he eventually settles with letting Eunice keep an eye on Matt. In the end, Matt gets to run the new bank just like he wanted. The next day, Matt meets up with a lawyer and starts signing loan contracts. During his signing, Matt receives a call from Florence Jr. regarding clients that want to withdraw all their money from Mainland Bank. To make matters worse, a federal bank examiner arrives for inspections. To help Matt, Bernard forces himself to dress up as a janitor so he can get closer during their meeting to aid Matt with unplanned answers. Unfortunately, it doesn't make a difference since the examiner discovers some critical problem on several loans. Bernard is in disbelief that the absurd loans got approved. Eventually, they learned that it was Florence Jr.'s doings all along. It turns out that while rushing to run the new bank, Matt skipped protocols and used a lawyer that Florence recommended. Through that, Florence was able to sneak in the problematic loans. Sometime later, Bernard and Joe tell Matt that the most rational move they can make is to walk away from the Bank of Marlon. Unwilling to let his bank go, Matt makes a move without letting his partners know. Joe learns about his move the next day and rushes to Mainland Bank with Bernard. They confronted Matt about the loans while Florence watches the spectacle with a proud look on his face. Bernard tells Matt to get their books, but it's too late. The federal bank examiners arrive to revoke Mainland Bank's license from operating. While leaving the building, the FBI arrests Bernard and Joe. While Bernard tried to stand his ground, it is a futile struggle. Bernard and Joe meet up with their lawyer. They learn that their case got dragged along with some racial politics in the country. Meanwhile, Matt talks with Senator McClellan about testifying against his partners in exchange for his freedom. Matt contemplates his next move that night and makes a phone call. Matt follows McClellan's suggestions and testifies against his partners at the Senate hearing. The next day, Bernard also meets up with McClellan and listens to his proposal. He gave him a choice to take an immunity deal and confirm Matt's testimonies, or Bernard can say whatever he wants and go to jail in the end. Bernard decides to say the words that have been hip in his heart for years. He talks about racial discrimination in the country. Shortly after that, both Bernard and Joe's fortunes got decimated after the hearing. The two also got sentenced to federal prison. Florence Jr. purchases the Mainland Bank for a small fraction of the price paid by Bernard and Joe. Meanwhile, Matt Steiner never got charged with any crime. Several years later, Bernard and Joe get out of prison. Eunice finds it bizarre that the two men seem happy despite losing all their fortune. Joe reveals that they have properties next to each other in the Bahamas. Eunice is in disbelief and asks Bernard how that happened. It turns out that the man Matt called the night before his testimony was Bernard. He told Bernard about the senator's deal proposal about testifying against him and apologized to him. In return, Bernard asked Matt a favor before the government could seize all their assets. The movie ends after we learned that Bernard and Joe's residential properties were instrumental to the fight against housing segregation in LA, and they still have 2 mansions next to each other in Bahamas. Thanks for watching. Please hit the thumbs up like button, smash the red subscribe button for more recaps. Leave your thoughts about this movie in the comment section below. Peace.
Just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna